Welcome to Life, Laughter, Divorce, episode 63. I am your host, Leanne Linsky.
I'm the boyfriend.
Welcome back to another wonderful week of divorce. We are excited, as always, to be here. So while you're tuning in, make sure you rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're on your PC, who says that? Or laptop, or somewhere safe.
You are so old.
I know.
Everyone's on their mobile or on their tablet or something, and you're like, PC. And you don't even use one of them.
I don't. Well, that's like last week I was talking to a friend about our episode, and I said, talking about weddings, you go to a wedding, you get nut cups and nuts and mints, and she's like, Leanne, that's so old. Don't say that. Nobody does that anymore.
I was going to say something last week about that episode, but I was just going to let it slide.
I just want to know if anybody was listening. I just think those are funny.
I remember that when I was a little kid and you did these little plastic things with the little squarish mints that were pastel colors.
But here's the crazy thing. I went to a wedding not that long ago. Well, maybe this decade. But they actually, because it was a very religious wedding, it was during the day. They didn't serve alcohol. Why was I there? Number one. But number two, they did give out nut cups. I kid you not. And they weren't nice metal little cups. They were those little, kind of those little paper cups that you get out of a dispenser. Those little shallow cups that you get like when you go
Dixie
to In-N-Out. The cups when you go to In-N-Out and you get ketchup.
Ah.
Those little paper cups that you put ketchup in from In-N-Out, they had nuts and mints in that. That's what I was thinking of when I said that.
That's pretty smart of them because they just go to In-N-Out and grab like 20 of them at a time. And
see? So maybe it's not that outdated. Maybe they're just trying to be frugal. I don't know. So anyway, whatever safe application you're using, so check out our website at lifelaughterdivorce.com.
And all the social media, don't forget to tell them about that.
Oh, yeah, there's a thing called social media these days. Giddy up on over there. Sit down with a nut cup and...
Send us some pictures, answer our questions.
Not of the nut cup. We don't want pictures.
Talking about a nut cup, did you hear that someone spent $7,000 on the jock strap for...
What?
Yeah, you're laughing at me, but someone spent $7,000 on Russell Crowe's jock strap from one of the movies he was in.
Really? Now that's a nut cup I'd like to see at a wedding. Raffle that puppy off after you take the garter off. Yeah, that brings a whole new meaning to gifts for the guest. Especially if it was filled.
Wow.
All right. Okay.
So what are we talking about today?
So today I want to talk about deal breakers. If you're thinking about getting married and nut cups are your deal breaker, well, I'm sorry. No, seriously though, I want to talk about deal breakers. Once you've gone through marriage and divorce and you're out there dating again, has your deal breakers changed for what you will tolerate in a relationship and what you won't? And then second of all, are your deal breakers for just a random, relationship different than your deal breakers for a marriage?
I can't answer the second one, but I would guess because I've seen, even when we were younger, our deal breakers for relationships were pretty, I don't know, dumb.
Like Crocs with socks?
Yeah, don't go around wearing your Birkenstocks with socks. Don't wear those kind of things, and I won't be around someone who wears those.
Right.
So, those are kind of foolish now. So I'm guessing after a marriage or even getting into a marriage or looking for a second marriage, your deal breakers would change. How about you? What were, I'm sure when you were in high school and just in college, your deal breakers were different than when you got married.
Yeah. Like in in high school, I didn't go to a dance with someone because his nickname was Satan. That was a deal breaker. His nickname, and that wasn't even his real nickname that he appointed himself.
Well, that means a lot because then other people appointed that as a nickname, and there's probably some truth to that. Then,
Yeah.
so yeah.
So having going by the nickname of Satan, that's definitely a deal breaker for me.
You didn't have any other dumb deal breakers back then?
Yeah, I would. Crocs weren't around back then. They just weren't. But black socks with shorts, that's a no-no. That's like.
But you wouldn't date somebody because of that?
Not if that's what you were wearing on the date. Probably not. In high school, no. In high school, we're super sensitive to everything. Would you have dated a woman who wore black socks on a date with her shorts?
Depends how short the shorts were. Just being honest.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, what about I think it was Seinfeld episodes when we think about deal breakers of dating, because like Elaine always dealt like the close talker.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah. People like that, or people who chewed with their mouth open.
Yeah, that one's annoying. Come on, have some manners. I think manners in general, that was a deal breaker for me. If you didn't have certain manners, like dinner manners or etiquette kind of things, no way, man.
Okay, so you don't like seafood?
Yes. Ha 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 ha.
Chewing with their mouth open like seafood. Yeah. I mean, black socks with shorts, chewing mouth open, annoying laugh. What about someone with an annoying laugh? What is an annoying laugh? Because I think laughs are pretty entertaining.
Well, they can be, but there's certain ones that could be also off-putting. Like, really? Those kind of.
Did that ever happen to you on a date?
I put up with it. I think she had short shorts on, so I was okay with it.
It depends. What about would short shorts win in the chewing with the mouth open?
No.
Okay. What about this really drives me nuts. Every sentence ends in a question? People who do upspeak?
Yes.
Could you ever date a woman who talked like they were saying, "I'm going to the bathroom"?
No, I think I've purposely not dated those kind of people.
Yeah. What about?
I don't think the funny thing is I don't even think it even gets close to that, because once you start talking to somebody, you're just like so off put. You're just like, you walk away. It doesn't even register as a deal breaker. It's just like, no.
What about too much hair? You ever date someone that's too hairy?
A woman?
Yeah.
No, that's never.
Because I know some men are self-conscious about having too much body hair.
And I know women are too.
Yeah. That people are self-conscious about it. I don't know if that's ever been a total deal breaker unless it was summer.
I'll date you between the months of September and May.
But during winter months, I think that'd be quite cozy. No? All right.
But those are the superficial kind of ones during dating and
when you're younger. But when you get older and you've been married and divorced a couple of times, I mean, your pond gets smaller. So you gotta start accepting.
You think that's the reason why you put up with more things? Because the pond's smaller?
I'm wondering,
Well, you're in that position.
That's how I got you, boyfriend.
Great. Wonder how many deal breakers I have.
None. No.
She rolled her eyes when she said that, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I'm wondering, I think, after you've gone through a few bad breakups or something, I think the deal breakers change. I don't know if you just don't have any. I think that would be a little odd, but unless your self-confidence is really worn and you start feeling like, well, maybe this is just, I'll settle instead of continuing on looking for what I really want.
Is it settling at that point though?
Well, if I have someone who's chewing with their mouth open, black socks, very hairy, and what were some of the other things? And they talk really close to me. That would be kind of terrifying. And I don't
I don't
know.
think you would get in a relationship with that person. Now at this point, deal breakers are like spending your life with him.
Yeah.
So I don't think you'd get to that point in a relationship or in a dating pool to be able like, all right, we're going to keep dating. You kick him out. But those are, I don't know if those, so I guess deal breakers to me has gotten really gray because before it was certain things and this would be it and you're done.
Right.
But now it's like, eh.
Well, and I thought this is kind of why I brought this up. I was talking to someone not too long ago and they've been through a divorce and, looking at dating now, it's like, well, what do I want in a relationship? If you've been in a relationship before that was difficult and challenging, do you even remember what a healthy relationship looks like or what it should look like? Or if you've never had a healthy relationship, how do you know?
You don't.
Right. So
you go by you see on the TV and the movies and that's a really
messed up place to start. So, when we look at what do we want in a relationship, we think, okay, well, I want these things and, these things would be nice. But what are your absolute deal breakers? Like, let's think about that for a minute. Because when I sat down and made a list the other day, I'm like, well, what would my deal breakers be? Well, it'd be lying, And lying covers a lot of things because can be a lot of gray area in lying. If you're out lying around, but there's a lot of gray area because there's those little things and then there's those big things. And where do you draw the line?
That's a great question, America. Where do you draw the line?
Well, yeah. Because it may start out as a little thing here or there, but then it grows into something very significant over time. So if you tolerate some little white lies at the beginning, now you're in it for the long haul and you start to see maybe this person's been lying about a lot of things all along.
And that could be that's not a relationship. Relationship should be built on honesty and communication. And if they're not being honest, then how do you trust the relationship?
Right. And why would you be in a relationship with someone who lied to you about little things like that? What would be so important about those little things that you'd have to lie anyway? So a deal breaker for me is lying. Like that's definitely one. And that comes to cheating too,
Well, those two go hand in hand because normally you're lying about the cheating until you get caught and then.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and then there's different ways people cheat. I mean, some people are they're out dating multiple people and have multiple partners, but then there's other people who are cheating and they have a whole nother life and they're married, and you hear about the people who've married someone and they actually have multiple spouses and live dual lives.
But even on a more subtler point, some people cheat emotionally with someone online or someone at work or whatever. Right. And I've heard spouses, it could be men or women, but spouses getting upset at their partner because they feel like they've been cut off emotionally or left out of a piece of them emotionally.
Yes.
And that's tough in a marriage because from what I expect or what I see in a marriage is devotion and openness and vulnerability and being able to show that emotional part of you and share that with somebody else. But if you share it with my wife and then I share it with someone else, then that is cheating. That is not sharing everything and being honest with the person I'm with.
Right. I agree. And I think that's a big one. And that's where a lot of things
gray.
Start falling apart. It's very gray because it's like, well, how do you quantify that? Or how do you see that? How do you talk about that? But I think, if you go back into some earlier episodes, actually, I think our second episode with Jay Jacobs, he talked about that emotional cheating online, even through Facebook. So right from his own living room, he could do that. And, trying to weed through that. And the other one would be stealing.
So what are we doing? We cutting off like 3 of the 10 commandments here?
Yeah, it sounds like it, right? But stealing, like somebody who would steal from you, why would you do that? If you found out like money was gone or they're like, oh, I just took this because.
That's how it starts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Just tell me next time. And then Yeah, that's how it starts.
That's how it starts. So that's a slippery slope as
What
well.
what are you talking? You talking about stealing actual material or financial things?
Yeah, it could be anything,
Yeah.
you know? It could be anything that's stealing. Like that would be a red flag that someone because that's just saying that somebody doesn't know your boundaries or there's no
Or there's
respect.
no respect for the boundaries.
Right.
Yeah.
No respect whatsoever for boundaries. What about when it comes to we've talked about this in previous episodes, but as a deal breaker, like signs, like the early signs of physical or emotional abuse.
But those are hard to see when you're in the relationship.
They're very hard to see, but there are some red flags, and we usually don't understand what those red flags could be until we're in it too deep. And now we're trying to get out of it and we're learning about it because those aren't things that are just taught in school or anything like that.
But your friends and the people around you that see the relationship, they see it. Yeah.
Yes. And I think it's super important. I've been that person where I'm like, well, I'm not going to, if you tell me not to do something, I'm more likely to go and do it than
Of course.
to listen. But really, I think, that's a lesson learned is like, listen to the people around you who know you best because they're seeing it from a outside perspective. They're seeing what's happening and they know you well enough to
and unbiased, and they see both sides of it. So they get a much broader or complete picture of what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, complete's probably a poor choice of words there, but because they don't see what's going on in the relationship, but they see externally what's going on, which could they know. And they typically do know, and you just need to be willing to hear what they have to say, because if you don't listen to them, which I've seen in relationships, people don't. Oh, you don't know what it's like when we're together. You don't know what it's like when it's just you, him, and I. You gotta be open and listen to all of that, and sort of put your love blinders off. Take those off for a little bit, and listen to the people that listen to the other people that care about you.
Yeah, and I think that goes as a whole, not even if there's just abuse happening, but if you're a good match. And I think, and when you were saying that, I'm like, that's right, because we talked to Olivia way back a couple episodes about her family stepped in and said, hey, I think you're in the wrong relationship.
Yeah. And she eventually listened to them. Yeah.
She really took it to heart and she was like, wow, you know what? You're right. And as hard as it is to take the truth from people, sometimes we need to do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
But in those two cases, and the other thing is, like you said, some of those things in the early stages, it's so subtle when it comes to anger issues or things like that. But one of the big red flags that came up in another conversation with a friend is when someone, she was going out on a date with somebody and it was only like the first or second date and the guy was already like, who are these guys you're talking to on social media or something? Like, hey, I just met you. Like, why are you questioning my friends or who I'm talking to? That's a little early in the game and that's a flag.
Yeah.
And it's like, take note because, you want
a sign of a controlling relationship.
Yeah, very controlling. Or people who are, if they're uncaring or unattentive at the beginning, that's this is the beginning when they should be paying most attention and really getting to know you. If they're unneedy or uncaring, unattentive or something right at the beginning when you're dating, like not returning your calls for days and things like that, they're not interested in you. Like that's not really super respectful.
But that's a sign. That's something you should be looking for or aware of. Yeah.
And I think looking at these kind of things, like someone who has some anger issues or uncaring or unattentive, or maybe they make fun of you or make light of something that's important to you, things like that in the early stages are actually big signs, of how someone's going to take care of you, how someone's going to be towards you.
What that relationship's going to be like. Yeah.
Yeah. And relationships should not be that hard. I mean,
that's one thing I've learned over my years is that if you have to work at it, then it's probably not right. You have to work at everything. Let me restate that. if you have to work really hard to make the relationship at least be at a level where you're somewhat happy, then it may not be worth it. It should be easy going and should be fun, and you both should be putting into the relationship. And before, I was always seeing that I would work either really hard at a relationship and not get much out of it and think it was great, but it's not. So it's just understanding what each person should put in and what you both should get out, and having an understanding of that. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. And I think to add to that is I think relationships are work. I mean, every day you have to put a
There
conscious
are work.
you have to put a conscious effort into a relationship. They don't just sustain themselves if you're not making the effort. But when it comes to things like this and you see little red flags and things that bother you, if we're not able to openly communicate to the other person and have that other person respond in such a way where they're like, oh, let me make an adjustment, or I hadn't realized, or geez, you're right, or whatever that is. If that open line of communication can't be there so that the relationship can evolve quickly, or that an apology can be had, that's a red flag. Because people do make mistakes, and sometimes people are nervous or they're awkward or things like that.
One kind or two time mistakes, fine. But there are patterns in life, and there are patterns to behavior, and you've got to be able to recognize those patterns to make better choices for you and your relationships.
Right. And also, it's another thing too to have these things happen, but listen to your spidey sense. That's something we don't do enough, is like really listen to our spidey sense. If we're not really excited, or we're not feeling good about that, or have a bad feeling, trust that feeling.
Yeah.
Like, we really need to trust ourselves. Not only do you need to trust the other person, but I think that's the other thing, trust ourselves. Especially if you've been in, like, after a few marriages and divorce, like me, it's like, oh, you hear people say my picker's broke and I'm just not doing the right things. But the other things that I actually was talking to people about is like getting ideas for what deal breakers would be. One that came up a few times, and I think this goes into dating more so than marriage, but what if you've been in a marriage a while and this starts coming up, but poor hygiene?
Ew.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
People wash it up.
Yeah, but you know that early on, and either you put up with it or you don't.
Right.
At least I hope you know that early on.
Yeah, I think that's definitely in the dating pool. And then some people talked about different things that I think are, what do you call it? Personality traits. Things, things that go in personality, like someone's too serious, or they're not serious enough, or they're too athletic, or they're not athletic enough, or there's neediness or lack of self-confidence, or somebody's lazy. Those can be deal breakers, but I think that's more of like a mix in like what you're looking for and you're compatible with.
Yeah.
But that leads into the last one, which is really important in a relationship, and it just can be your overall chemistry. And chemistry isn't just something like, I don't think chemistry is just sex. I think chemistry is overall like how you mesh together.
No, I agree with that. And it's we don't know what it is. We don't know why there's chemistry between two people, but it is. You've got to have that sort of butterfly feeling a little bit, at least in the beginning, to know that you want to see this person, that there's something that connects you.
Right. And butterflies are different than that feeling of nausea. So pay attention to that.
I hope you know the difference.
Yeah. But there should be some sort of chemistry. And I think in talking to some people, some people really like a lot of PDA, public displays of affection, and other people do not. And that can be a deal breaker for some people, because some people can take signs of the other partner not wanting public displays of affection as they're trying to hide you. Someone was talking about that way back as like they were dating somebody who didn't want any signs of PDA, and they didn't want to be in a photos or on social, and tagged in social media. Boyfriend, this sounds like you, but I'm kidding. But that was a deal breaker for someone, because they didn't feel the other person was invested in it the same way that they were in public. Because I don't want to say they needed to be validated in public. Maybe they did. But for some people, that's important that they can do that. And some people are
some people don't want it to be in public.
Right, exactly. So that can be a deal breaker for people. I don't know in marriage. I think in marriage at some point you're just like, yeah, whatever. But
pretty much
when it comes to that kind of stuff or a longer term relationship. But I'm going to guess that, well, and I got to think of who I was speaking to at the time, that came from a younger person. And I think things are a little bit different with people in a younger generation because they grew up with social media, that everything's on social media. Everything
is out in public.
Right.
Yeah.
So younger people dating older people, you might have a problem.
But so over all of this, we don't have any answers. We just know that there are deal breakers.
Right.
But there's no solution to this. This is just knowing yourself and knowing the relationship, or having an idea of what relationship you want to be in, and trying it out.
Yeah. And I think it is a good idea to have this. And I know when
to have what?
To a list of knowing what your deal breakers are.
Oh.
Because when I started dating again, I actually made a list, and we've talked about this before, is making a list of what you want in a person. But what about having a list of things that you will not tolerate in a relationship? Things that are things where you have to draw the line and be like, hey, I'm out. I don't deal with lying. I don't deal with cheating. I don't deal with stealing or any sort of physical or emotional abuse. And here's my definition of what those things are. Because we know that some of those things are gray, but if you were to write it out and say, here's the red flags that I should take note of if they come up in a new relationship, and here's where I draw the line. And because how can we expect somebody else to respect our boundaries if we don't know and respect them ourselves?
That's a very good point.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, is because it's one thing to be like, well, I'll never do that again. But what about the things that you really haven't experienced yet or come across? And I think, talking to other people, and that's why I like doing this podcast, is we learn so much from other people's experience. So hopefully we don't have to go through that same experience ourselves. But, if we take a few minutes during this next week, write down all of the things that we really don't want in a relationship, unhealthy things. What do we look for? How do we identify those things? And this is where I draw the line. How could that be a game changer as we go forward?
Well, it's changed your life. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it has. So a little homework assignment out there for our listeners is, what are your deal breakers? What does that look like? What is it that you're not going to tolerate in a new relationship going forward? And is it, just a fun, I'm dating relationship as it is for a long-term and possibly new marriage? We want to know. So I bet you know what the question of the week is going to be.
No, what is it?
The boyfriend's like, I don't know. What's it going to be? Do you like cycling? No, it's going to be, what's your deal breaker?
So where do they answer this at? Do they answer it at info@Life Lafter Divorce?
You can send us an email at info@Life Lafter Divorce and tell us what your deal breakers are. If it's a little bit more lengthy and you want to share an entire list or maybe an experience or extended thoughts, or you can just pop on social media at Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram anytime during the week on any of our posts. But I will be posting one post that specifically asks the question of the week, so you can watch for that too.
Perfect.
Yeah. Wow.
It's another wonderful week of divorce.
It is, you guys. It is. It's going to be an awesome week. So we look forward to hearing what you have to say about this topic. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you soon.